So this week my friends at Brighton Permaculture Trust have asked me to build a mobile watering system for all the fruit trees they've been planting around Brighton City. And these are all the parts that we're going to put together. Okay, so this is the pump we're going to be working with. It's a Clark water pump. It's meant for pumping out ditches and flood control stuff, but it will pump 2 inches of water 30 metres up in the air, which is the most important thing for this project, because a lot of the trees are on hills and the road is at the bottom of the hill where you're going to park up with the water tank. So this is where the water goes in. So we're going to make a hose that goes from here to the water tank, which is going to be a large IBC, which you'll get to see at the end of the video. Okay, so for our whole system we're going to be using these cam locks to connect pipes to and from each other. This one has a really coarse thread in it. It goes on the IBC, and it was a little bit tight, so I just had to take a little bit of material off this surface with a really fine file, and now that sits in here, and you pull these down. It's still a little tight, but it's a lot better than it was. And that's one now, and it squashes a seal in there as well to help keep it all together. And so this piece, the one with the cam locks on it, is going to go into the end of this green pipe, and that will connect to the IBC, and the other end of this green pipe is going to go onto this, which will connect to the pump. Not forgetting to put its washer in, because otherwise it won't seal. So to hold these onto this, we're going to use these. These are stainless steel Jubilee clips, and just so they don't rust. And for each one of these, we're going to put 2 of these on, because Jubilee clips never really seal under this point. So you need to put 2 of them on so that they oppose each other. So many. So you need to put them on like this, and that will ensure that you have a much better, more secure seal. 1, 2. Okay, and as you can see, these are quite big. You can do these with do these up 2 ways. You can have a screwdriver bit or a 8mm spanner, and on my drill I've got an 8mm socket, and it's set at a really low torque, so that when it gets done up I can finish the last little bit by hand, so I know how tight I'm doing them. Sweet, bar tightening. This bit's done. Right, so now we've got water going into the pump, we need water to come out of the pump. And we're going to go into this. This makes it a little bit more convoluted than just putting a pipe on here, but it will give us a lot more control and it will make the pump last a lot longer. So we're going to go straight into an unequal T. So it's 2-inch diameter here and 1 inch here. And the 2-inch way will go into a check valve, so that all the water in the hose, when you shut the end of the hose off, doesn't fall back into the pump. And then into one of these connectors, which will take all the hoses. The other one, the unequal T, which is a little bit unusual for this sort of pump, is going into 1-inch male connector. And then it's going into this bypass valve, which means if we shut the end of the pump off, we can shut it off for as long as we want without the pump getting damaged through water not circulating through it properly, because it will build the pressure up, this will release, and then this will send water back into the IBC. And then it will always, even though it's a reduced amount of water, it will still be pumping some water. And then when you open the end of the hose again, it should close and water should flow out of there instead. That's the plan anyway. The complicated bit is when all of this is together, you can't screw it into this because this bar's in the way. So this is just loosely together, but this is how it's going to be with the bypass out here, but that doesn't matter at this point. And then I want this to go onto here like this. This piece needs to be vertical, ideally, like that. And it makes it rather tricky to get everything on. And I think with everything done up, it might miss. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to take this off, and then put it all together, and then see if it fits. Okay, so we've got a bit of a tricky joint here. This thread is what they call BSP parallel, and so is this one. So it means that when you screw them together, they don't necessarily form a seal. So we're going to put some PTFE on this, but I don't want to put masses on because this casting's really light, and I'm concerned it will crack if I put too much on. So we're going to put a little bit on the front of the thread, and then I'm going to use a product called Heldite, which is a liquid one. This one's nice and tight. I'm going to go with 2.5 grams. Oh, hopefully tight. Hopefully it'll be nice. Each one should go. So I'm going to put this on there. Normally, this one would have the I'm not using that because it's one selection. Need less flaps. See if it's down. Nice big dot bomb. Here we go. Yeah. At least it's nice and tight, it doesn't rattle anymore. This goes into here, but if you look at this thread closely, you can see that it tapers in slightly, which means as you do it in, it gets tighter and tighter, and the waterproofness of this comes from the two metal surfaces mating. And so a liquid compound, if you're going to use a compound, a liquid one is better, at least in my opinion. But we're just going to put a very little bit around this top edge, because it doesn't need much. And I'm going to screw this in here. So hopefully this goes all the way in. See how it's really loose because it's tapered? And you get to the end, and it's not. Next bit, these bits go on here like this. The one problem is, this is a check valve. It's got this little swinging gate in here, and this flange here that it seats against means that this thread can't go in deep enough. It goes in about that far, and it's still loose. Ooh, focus. It's still loose at there, so I'm going to have to cut a bit off. And I think I'm going to have to cut it incrementally, so do one bit, and then another bit, and then another bit, until it seats really tight in there. This bit, this bit I don't need to worry about any sealant, because it's got a nice O-ring on it. And that's going to simply screw into here. Like so. Okay, so got this thing together. There's a few funny angles, but helps miss things. I'm going to mount this bit back onto here. You can't really see right there. And there's a nice rubber gasket, so we don't need to worry about sealant. And we're going to go here and on here. So when doing this, I want to be really careful that when bolting this down it doesn't hit here, and I keep bolting. I don't want to deform this plate because it's a really lightweight cast aluminium thing, and there'll be a very high risk of cracking it with these bolts. There we go. Right, so I've trimmed this. You can see one side's longer than the other now, and that goes in there. There's going to be a little hose that goes on here, so we're just going to put this in here. one possible problem that we may have in the future is this is a very light, this bit here is a very light casting, and there's a lot of weight here, and then there's going to be a big old hose that may or may not be dragged around on there. And so got one of these. This is a little 2-inch pipe clip, and we're going to pop that around this joint here. Okay, so we got our little bracket, and we're going to put a bolt through it, and we have a nut on the other end, and that way we can do these 2 nuts up and it'll crimp the piece of metal band around the bar. And we're going to put a piece of rubber in here so that it doesn't mar the bar and it helps it grip. And then when that's all clamped on, we'll still be able to turn this, which will allow us to bolt the pipe to the bracket. Okay, so the next bit is to make all these. We're having 50 metres of hose, and we could have done it all in one length, but as the sites are going to be variable in needing different lengths of hose, these are in 10 metre sections that you can all link together so that you can unroll, because this is layfat, you have to unroll it to use it. By having it more manageable in shorter lengths, you can set up the length you need rather than having to unwrap every. As with earlier, we're going to use 2 of these in opposition on the hose. Right. Okay, right, I've done all the hoses, they've all got the things on. There's more over here. And I trimmed the Jubilee clips just because they were really long and sticking out, but it has left these sharp little edges. They were sharp before, but these are still, you wouldn't want to catch your hand on them. So I'm going to put a little bit of heat shrink over them. Just like pop it over here. Right, all of these hoses came with these. If anybody can think of a good idea or a good project to do with these, I would love to hear it. So if you can drop that down in the comments below, it may end up being a future video. So suggest away. Alright, so this ball valve is for controlling the flow at the end of the hoses for watering trees. It's a little heavy duty, but it'll be fine. So we're going to put in the cam lock piece in the end. I'm just going to pop an O-ring in here for it to seal against, and then screw this in here. If it needs a bit of PTFE or a bit of Haldite to help seal the water in, we will, but hopefully this O-ring will do the job. Okay, so the last set of Jubilee clips to do is this 1-inch pipe that goes on here. And that's going to be the overflow, so that when the pump isn't pumping water out of here, it's always circulating water. Okay, so I don't have an IBC here to do testing with, so we're going to take this fitting off. We're going to put this filter on so we can test it in the pond instead. Okay, so we've got the filter in here, which goes to the pump, which goes all the way up here and over here. Alright, so we did have some issues with this test. The main one being that the pond has got a lot of blanket weed in it, and it clogged the filter almost instantly after turning the pump on, and so the pump wasn't getting enough water supply to run fully. Okay, so the next piece of the puzzle is to make a box for all the hoses And we're going to use recycled ply, reclaimed ply. The edges look a bit ratty, but actually in the middle this should be pretty good. So we're going to cut it out to size. Alright, so this box is very much function over form. Not pretty, but it houses all the things in a neat and tidy way and keeps them all protected from weather and borrowing. Okay, so we're just set up for a quick test with the IBC and just filling it up with a bit of water. We've got the pump all connected up, we've got the blue hose all rolled out, and the overflow going back into the top of the IBC. Normally you wouldn't use the hose from the pump to fill the IBC up, but we did this time, and turns out it's really hard to aim into the hole. If you found this sort of long form video useful, then please tell me in the comments below, and if you like the random things that I happen to make for people, then please consider subscribing to the channel. I try and release at least one video every week, normally on a Friday morning. And I hope to see you next time.